Hello and welcome to episode 7 of Mountain Mindset. My name is Andrei Mandzuk. I'm a mental performance coach, professor of sports science, and the founder of Mzk Performance. This week I'm joined by Clara Brown. Clara is a member of the Team USA paracycling program, gearing up to compete at World Cups and the Tokyo Games this summer. During our conversation, Clara and I chat deeply about developing self-belief, how to utilize visualization effectively, and why a good sleep and pre-sleep routine is key for maximizing recovery and driving performance. I really appreciated hearing Clara's insights into preparation, into training, and into recovery. I think that's a really powerful lesson we can all learn from someone who's truly at the top of their game. On that note, let's dive into our conversation. Clara, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
So why don't you start us off here, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. My name is Clara Brown, and I am a Paralympic hopeful. I ride bikes. I ride road and track. And I come from a town just outside of Portland, Maine, but now live in Whitefish, Montana, which is just outside of Glacier National Park. And I've been pretty new to cycling. I've been riding competitively only for about 3 years, but it's been kind of a whirlwind, quick rise to success, which I'm very, it's been a lot of hard work, but it's also been a quick trajectory. So yeah, I'm hoping to compete in my first Paralympic Games this summer in Tokyo. So they were postponed, obviously, from the pandemic, and very grateful to have the opportunity to be able to compete. So yeah.
Hopefully that's great. What was your origin story with cycling? You said you started recently, relatively speaking.
Yeah, so I grew up as an athlete, just kind of doing a bunch of different sports as a kid, and my kind of passion was gymnastics. I was in the gym, 20 hours a week, and doing handstands any chance I could, one of those kids. And then one day at practice, I had a fluke accident. I landed on my head and crushed 2 vertebrae in my neck and damaged my spinal cord. So initially paralyzed from the neck down, and then relearned how to do basic life tasks again as I regained function neurologically, and then eventually how to walk and then ride my bike. And that was just kind of coincidence that one of my goals in rehab was to learn how to ride a bike again, because it was never really a passion of mine growing up. I just kind of set it as a milestone of, returning to normalcy. And then I didn't really ride until college. I was a coxswain on the rowing team, so the person that steers and directs the crew, and loved being on the water, but I wasn't doing anything physical for myself and really missed that aspect. And my body had recovered enough to be able to do something. I couldn't run, but I was looking for other sports, and a friend recommended a road bike, and it was an instantaneous love. I modified the bike quite a bit just because my right side is quite a bit paralyzed still, but very much easy to accommodate with cycling, and I could ride. And then, yeah, I worked for a bike touring company post college, and just coincidentally met a man who's on the Paralympic Advisory Committee on one of my trips, and he was like super passionate. And he was like, "Clara, you need to get into competitive cycling. You're perfect. Let me connect you with all of my connections at the USOPC." And yeah, a few weeks later, I was at a talent ID camp, and yeah, that was 2018. So very quick kind of turnaround to getting on Team USA and competing on the world stage. It's been a lot.
That's so serendipitous. And it sounds like things have moved at a pretty quick pace since then in terms of your career trajectory.
Yeah. So my talent ID camp was in June of 2018. And then I was invited to race at a World Cup, the last one of the season, in August. So just a few months later. And I wasn't part of Team USA. They just invited me to compete as an independent athlete. And I ended up taking bronze in the road race. So it was just indicative that I did have kind of a future in the sport as long as I, committed to training. And that's what I did. So I moved into the training center in January, 6 months later, and made the national team. And yeah, ended up taking 2 world championships a year later, and now going to my first games. So it's been, yeah, very fast.
That first bronze medal must have felt like such an achievement or such like a key milestone.
Yeah, it was it it's hard to put in words. I didn't know what at all like to expect from my competitors. And I was fit and rode quite a bit, but I wasn't training specifically, and so I just didn't know where I was at. And then to be able to take away a podium from my first race, I was like, okay, I think I might have a chance at this. This is pretty cool. So yeah, I still have and had quite a bit to learn, but was really grateful to have a solid result my first go.
That's amazing. And then, so what's something that we might not know about you?
Um, I love to do crosswords. I would say that's like one of my favorite things to do in my downtime. I also eat a lot of pickles. Like love pickles. Anytime I go to a grocery store, no matter what, I like to go through the pickles aisle and just see what they have. Like, you have your classic like Blasics and those, but then I want to see like if there are any kind of local specialties. I've got to try out the pickles. So
Are we talking like pickles out the jar, or?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
I didn't realize there was that much variety. That's actually really interesting.
Really? Oh my gosh, you go to any American grocery store, there's so many pickles. I mean, I don't like bread and butter pickles that much. That's probably the one type that's not my thing, but I like spicy pickles. I like, dill pickles.
There you go.
Yeah, can't explain it. I just really like them.
So if you reflect upon your career to date, have there been any real standout moments along the way?
Yeah, I think obviously the strong results, like I won 2 world championships in the same weekend at Track Worlds in Milton, Canada, which is actually just outside of Toronto. And yeah, those stand out to me as these milestone achievements, and that's what solidified my spot on the Tokyo team. But I think more memorable are the moments where like things didn't quite work out, and I took them as learning experiences. So like the year prior, I had made my very first team trip. I was competing on behalf of Team USA at Track Worlds 2019. And my very first race, I fell out of the start gate and just had like a horrible performance. I mean, it was a few seconds slower than what I had expected time wise. And on the track, it's very much like you can gauge how fast you're going to go. Obviously it's a timed event. But it was just like the nerves got the best of me. I just was so anxious, and like I felt like the next start I had, I was able to kind of refocus and just not be so caught up in the moment. And then also just training, I've had some really memorable times where like I've been miserable or I've been really strong or something, and I have taken that, I'll think about that when I'm suffering in a race and be like, okay, I was this strong on this day. Like I can repeat that. Or I made it through this horrible ride. Like I made it to whatever my end goal was. If I could have done that, I can do this. So yeah, those are kind of the memorable moments.
Yeah, it sounds like you learned a lot. You learned a lot from them, in particular, with kind of falling out the start there.
Yeah, just how to like calm the nerves and not be so caught up, and like such a big thing to be able to compete on the world stage. And yeah, luckily it didn't have any big repercussions. I had a solid performance the rest of the weekend. I had 3 more races I could have a second chance at, so glad to have have that behind me. Hopefully never again.
Well, like I said, an important lesson for I think any athlete to learn, no matter what you're competing in, and something that gets the best of us, I think, all at some time or another.
Yeah, just to not be so, I mean, it's hard. You're always going to have race day nerves, but just the learning how to mentally prepare for big events. And I think, going into the next world championships and, my Pan Am Games performance, I really had more successful than I could have expected. And it really, I would credit that to just being able to mentally better prepare and feel like I could calm myself down and you know try to calm the anxiety a little bit. So yeah, learning experiences.
We touched upon it as we went there, but I'm just curious for any other specific kind of standout challenges along the way, and any other kind of effects, be that positive or negative, they've had down the line.
Yeah, I would say some of the big, like, obviously the most recent challenge has been COVID and not racing. Obviously, I'm so new to the sport, and so I was just actually talking to my boyfriend about this. We had a race weekend last weekend, and I was so nervous because it felt like I was brand new to racing again. He's had 10 years of experience, and a year off is, a drop in the bucket, or like, obviously it affects him. But for me, I was like, a full year off after only racing for 2 years prior to that. I feel like I'm just a brand new rider again. And I would say that was a huge challenge for me. I didn't have any issues staying motivated training, but it was just the more of the anxiety and the mental preparedness going into that last weekend. And luckily, again, I had a very solid performance, but it was a challenge just going a year without pinning a number and lining up to the start line. And then I've had injuries along the way. I've had obviously this body that's been through quite a bit. And I have a lot of orthopedic issues on my strong neurologic side, and that I've been dealing with a lot of overuse challenges. And so just learning how to take it easy has been actually another big point. And so luckily was at the Olympic and Paralympic Training Center for over a year and could take advantage of all the recovery tools in sports medicine. But just even mentally, taking time away from your sport and being so new, all I want to do is train as hard as I possibly can and get better, and realizing that you can't get better while you're injured. And so that posed a real challenge for me, just because I'm very much go, go, go and want to be training hard all the time. So
it must be really grueling on your body being on a bike for that long.
Yeah, I mean, it adapts quickly, but even just like neck and shoulders, things that you're not using physically, like you're mostly using your legs, but it takes a toll just everywhere. And so being on top of addressing those little issues as they come up has been huge for me. So yeah, and the legs obviously take a huge beating. the powerhouse.
Do you find that there's a large difference in your preparation for track and road events?
I mean, training wise, yes, just because they're totally different. Track is very sprint based, a lot more power and faster. And then my road events are longer. In para, we road race, like my road races are about an hour and a half. So they're not, like when you think road racing, probably you think these long tours. So mine are a little bit shorter, and that allows me to do both, I would say. But yeah, certainly in road season, I have quite a bit more volume, and I'm doing time trialing, which is different in its own regard. Training for that is such a unique event. And so, yeah, it changes based on the time of year. And going into Tokyo, I'll do both road and track. So kind of having to find the sweet spot of training for both of those and being strong in all four events I'll race on between the road and track. So yeah, quite a bit that goes into it.
So what does the format for Tokyo look like for you? Is it a medley of events? Are they independent events from each other?
All of mine are independent. That's I could potentially make a team sprint team on the track. We haven't announced that team yet, so could potentially do one team event. But the events I'll do for sure, I'll do 2 on the track, and those are first up. I'll do an individual pursuit, which is 3 kilometers, so roughly about 4 minutes for my field, and then a 500-meter time trial, which is roughly 40 seconds or so for my field. So both pretty quick. And then I'll have a week off, and then I'll do my road events. So I'll do an individual time trial and then the road race. So all of it, yeah, potential for medals and individual events for me. So it's just a interesting game.
That's really exciting. It's also so varied. I can't believe the differences and distances within such a short time span.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm lucky to be able to compete on all of them. That's I hope to be prepared. I mean, obviously I'll focus on a few, my more specialty events, but I hope to be able to do well in all 4. So
What would you say your specialty falls as there?
I would say on the track, I'm definitely more of a pursuiter. And so I'll focus on that going into the game. So that's, the 4-minute power. And that's in the time trial position as well. And so that will translate to my time trial. I think I'll focus on that too. I just had a really strong time trial performance last weekend in Alabama. So it really made me feel like we've been preparing properly, and like I can only improve going into Tokyo. So at least have that.
Yeah, tell us about that event this past weekend.
Yeah, that was a domestic qualifier event. We'll have one World Cup race in Europe, which will be early May. And it's our last opportunity as countries to earn spots for the games. So you're spending the quad building up to each games, trying to earn as many points as possible so you can qualify as many athletes. So this is kind of a big deal with the World Cup. Obviously, we hadn't had racing for a year. And so this is our last opportunity to hopefully be able to bring more athletes to Tokyo for Team USA. So this past weekend was just the qualifying event to make the team for the World Cup. And both my boyfriend and I qualified. So that was really cool for us to have that weight lifted off and know that we'll both go to Belgium and be able to compete. So yeah, it was.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a big weekend.
So I think it stands out while we're chatting here, but I'm just curious about what kind of mindset you approach life with, you approach performance with, kind of how does that set for you?
I would say overall, I'm pretty optimistic. Yeah, I would say in general, I like to think of the positives of things. Especially, getting hurt at such a young age. It was a pretty traumatic event, but I just always had this mindset like I will get better. And it's hard because so much of the recovery aspect is specific to my injury. Like I was very lucky in the way that I was hurt and that I had an incomplete spinal cord injury, so I was able to at least have the potential to regain function. And so I think there's a lot of my recovery can be credited to just the nature of my injury, but also obviously I put in quite a bit of work. And so I don't want to, like I don't want to talk up the mindset of like, if you believe it, you can do it. But I really did feel like I was so focused on returning to my athletic pursuits and getting outside and doing all these things that I loved, that it really drove me to stay positive and knowing that I would be back doing it at some point at some capacity. And yeah, I like to play this game with myself of like, people talk like, oh, worst case scenario, this will happen. Well, I like to flip it and say like, okay, best case scenario. And that's how I'll look at things. So I'll say like, okay, best case scenario, like this is what would happen if I go after whatever it may be. And so I like to kind of use that perspective whenever looking at situations.
And it really seems like that like optimistic framework has been something that's persisted into kind of later life and now into your cycling career.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that definitely, even just with the cycling career in itself, like I was working this job and had asked for some time off to go to the talent ID camp once I met this man, George, and, had some disagreements about time off and everything. And I was like, I'll just do it. Like, I'm gonna go to this camp. Like, best case scenario, like I impress them, and I'm somewhat into the athlete pool, and hopefully can make the national team. And that happened, and like I had put in quite a bit of work, trying to stay fit in general just before the camp, and then just demonstrated there that I had work ethic and had passion for bikes and really wanted to be competitive, and I think that showed. And so, just putting out your best self and hoping that things things go your way. I mean, there's some luck involved, but also I think, just being positive and willing something can have a big effect.
Was there anywhere that you kind of learned that best case scenario game from? Just something that prompted that? Or is that
Um,
something you developed yourself?
I don't know. I would say in general, like the people I surround myself with are pretty positive, and I don't even know like when that came up. Like I remember in college, like obviously going through a lot of identity crises, as all college students do, or many do, and just kind of checking myself and being like, okay, what am I so scared of? Like, there are a lot of great things that could come of whatever decision was I was being faced with, and so I don't know. It's been I don't know. I can't even really credit it to a particular time or person. Just feeling like I've been kind of optimistic my whole life, and then, as things come up, just framing them as positives.
Well, I mean, it's uplifting to hear about for sure. And I think it's a really strong lesson for a lot of us, just about being able to kind of take those risks and view stuff as opportunities.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, viewing them as opportunities, and if you fail, it's a learning experience, and I've certainly had my fair share of failures or things not necessarily going my way, but yeah, if you can look them as learning experiences and hopefully improve your chances for the next opportunity.
We chatted a little bit earlier about settling your nerves before big events, and uh, I'd love to hear a little bit your perspective on kind of mental strategies or skills or tactics that you might use to either settle the nerves in that situation or in any other performance or really life
Yeah.
situation.
um and I think it's interesting, like as a gymnast, I was so performance based and routine based. I visualized a lot, especially the events. I was like, balance beam was kind of what my kryptonite. Like that's what really scared me, and I found like just any chance I had to visualize things, I what ended up being my strongest event. Spending so much time mentally preparing for my, even just practice, but then obviously the events where I was competing, it really translated. And so taking that strategy to the bike, obviously, like you're just pedaling, but if you are like visualizing how you're breathing and how like the corners and like getting to know the courses, I felt so much more at ease, especially in the track. Like when I was describing falling out of the start gate, like I just mistimed it. And now I just visualize, okay, like I have the countdown and I know like my body position and I know the timing. And in my head, I can run through that and I feel a lot more prepared. And then also in gymnastics, I felt very much like I was such a fangirl and I loved watching the professionals and like my idols. At the time, like the US gymnasts have always been strong, but I just like I idolized, that era of early 2000s. And so with cycling, I've kind of applied that same strategy of like I've been really watching a lot of like professional racing and hoping to apply that to the para aspect and what I'm doing. So like for example, my sprint form has gotten so much better just watching like able-bodied professionals and being able to mimic that. And I think visualizing and being able to mimic has been really helpful. So
It sounds like the visualization is really a multi-sensory process as well. Is that kind of accurate?
yeah, I would say, especially too with like my body's not really what it what it once was, like I have a lot of weird like sensory and perception issues, and so being able to like add that extra element of like preparedness, I would say, has been really helpful to be able to actually like perform and have my body do what I'm hoping it will do.
Do you
So
have a structured visualization practice as part of your training, or is it kind of like an as and when thing?
yeah. Yeah, I don't really take like any structured time. I just I do have quite a bit of downtime with my day to day. Like I spend quite a bit of time on the bike, and then when I'm not on the bike, it's recovery. And so I'll be doing like sitting in the recovery boots or doing, massage or whatever it may be. And so I do have the time to just kind of get lost in my thoughts and visualize. So, yeah. And obviously, like lying in bed at night, like I really try to not be on my phone. And so I'll just take that time too to make a pointed effort to think through whatever may be coming up routine wise.
And is it the case that you're often visualizing what's coming up or what's happened during the day?
Yeah, exactly. Or like even I like to think back through, okay, so I went on a 3-hour ride and there are totally corners or like things that I felt like I could have taken differently, like different lines, whatever, like if there were potholes or something like I had hit, like I can go back and visualize and say like, oh, I could have done this differently or taken this corner better. And then riding behind my boyfriend, which we are training partners and ride quite a bit together, I feel like I've learned so much just by watching him and then mimicking it or like replaying how he took a specific line or whatever it may be and applying that to the next time we go and ride. So it's been helpful for sure. Just yeah, have some time to think and reflect, and then also like visualize what's coming up. And like when we were in Huntsville, we had 4 days to pre-ride the course, so I felt like I really knew the course, and I could, every night before I went to bed, just think through like this corner and where I'm going to put power into the pedals and where I'm going to kind of back off. And yeah, I had the best time trial of my life, I would say. So yeah.
It's really neat to hear you talk about just a crossover between visualization and like observational learning or vicarious experience. I think there's so much we can learn from like pairing those two things together.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm no expert on, the terminology, but I've just found that as great strategies for activities I've done. And it applies to skiing too, like especially having a weirdly functioning body, like my right leg doesn't work very well and it's always kind of lagging in the turns. And so I'll like go out skiing with some very competent friends and just really try to like mimic how they're turning. And I find like my right leg can perform so much better as I like watch somebody else and kind of try to, yeah, play.
When you were younger and you kind of got into visualization as a practice, was it something that you were always pretty competent at, like forming images and being able to kind of stay in that zone? Or was it something you had to work at a wee bit?
Um, that was definitely a skill we practiced in gymnastics, like with led by our coaches. Um, yeah, and I'm so grateful. Like there are a lot of just life skills that I've been able to translate from gymnastics growing up. And of course, we spent so much time in the gym, but yeah, it would be almost every practice at the end, we would be stretching and just kind of cooling down. And our coach would walk us through kind of a visualization of like whatever routine we had just done. And I thought, yeah, like that was really helpful to then prepare me for whatever came next, the whole neck injury. And then yeah, rowing, I've kind of applied it to every skill set beyond gymnastics. So
I'm always really fascinated by how we can apply these skills we learn as youth athletes or youth that we're coaching can apply these skills and then transfer them into all these different situations throughout their future lives, be that athletically or otherwise.
yeah, it's huge. I mean, like being an athlete has so many um amazing, transferable skills beyond the field. And of course, like, that's kind of a cliche. People know that, but I've taken a lot of the mental strategy most. I found that most helpful.
When you're preparing for kind of a new course and you're riding it in that like pre-race preparation phase, is there anything specific you're doing to gather information for visualization, or is it mostly relying on memory?
I mean, yeah, like there are things I will pointedly look for. So, um, we'll look for like pavement quality, and like you'll have a whole stretch of road, like whether it's a lane blocked off or two lanes, whatever, and always in search of like the cleanest pavement and the fastest pavement. And so you'll ride the course and you'll say like, okay, the right lane is pretty bumpy, like I'm going to stay over to the left side where it's smoother pavement and faster. Or okay, this is kind of a hard curve to the right, like I'm going to make sure I'm going to hug that curve to the right so I have the fastest line or like the shortest line. um or as I'm riding corners, like I'll say, okay, I have a left hand turn here, like am I carrying speed, how much speed, how much do I have to brake before planning that turn. And so, yeah, there's quite a bit that I'm looking for. And it's also really helpful to ride with other people and talk it through and say, like, okay, how fast would you take this? Or like, at what point would you kind of back off the pedals and like get out of your aero bars? This is more for time trialing. And so just being able to kind of trade notes and talk out loud allows me to memorize things a lot faster. And then, of course, just repetition, being able to go through the course several times before riding, which is usually the case, and will be the case in Belgium because we're there so early for quarantining purposes. Can definitely visualize, but then using tools like Google Maps too. Like if for whatever reason can't get to the course, you can look at Street View and just say like, okay, it looks as of 2015, the pavement was pretty good. So hopefully we can stay on the right side where the pavement looks pretty good from the Street View or whatever. I mean, yeah, there's a lot that goes into course previewing, and I don't know, looking for things that stick out and eking out any amount of speed you can.
It's fascinating, I think, to see the differences between different activities and how that preparation phase when it comes to visualizing and knowing what's
Yeah.
going to happen terrain-wise goes on. I work with a lot of golfers that really use Google Maps as like a crutch when they're playing a new to them course or a new to them tournament. And similarly, I worked previously with a middle distance runner who found GoPro footage of the course they were about to run, and
Yeah.
it was like a gold mine. It was like, oh my god, I can see the course. It's
Yeah, speaking of, we have like our Tokyo course is on the Fuji Speedway. And so I've just Googled like videos of Formula One cars like driving the course. I'm like, okay, this is what it looks like to take it at 100 miles an hour. I don't think I'll take it that fast, but like it's been so helpful to see. I mean, because we as a team have not gotten over for a course preview. And so, yeah, there are so many tools out there to help you kind of anticipate what you're getting into. So, yeah.
a little bit of technological creativity goes a long way, I
Yeah,
think.
totally. That's really cool.
So, how about habits and routines? Is there anything that you kind of do regularly, or that's been a real game changer for you in terms of those structural aspects?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest changes I've made over this past year during quarantine and so much time at home has been um, being particular about sleep and sleep hygiene, and being very aware of like how much screen time I'm doing throughout the day and then also leading up to bed. And so I really try to put the phone away like at least half an hour before bed and turn it on do not disturb and don't touch it until I wake up, and like I think that's been huge, allowing me to like sleep better throughout the night and fall asleep earlier, not spending like hours trying to fall asleep and like calm my brain down. And then also I'll do like a stretching routine most nights just to like like I hate to even admit it, but like set the mood, like put some candles out, like the essential oil diffuser going, just like make it a nice zen moment and just stretch and like move. And it's not any particular like routine, but just like kind of winding down, I would say, and like obviously can get lost in the thoughts there of like visualizing courses or whatever I've talked about, has been really helpful to just be better about sleep. And then I also like to do, I don't know, some sort of breathing routine. Um, if I am particularly anxious, like I've really enjoyed doing box breathing. I think has been just a way to like calm myself down if I'm particularly stressed about something.
Do you want to give us a quick overview of what box breathing is for the listeners?
Do you do box breathing as well? um, that's where you're inhaling for a certain amount of time, like 5 seconds or so, we'll say. You'll hold your breath, and then you'll exhale for 5 seconds, hold your breath, and then you'll start the process again. So it's like a very methodical, um, and it just you can kind of get lost in thought of like just a very rhythmic, like in and out, and like holding your breath and just feeling um, like the weight of like deep breaths. It's really nice and soothing.
Yeah, I think rhythmic is a very good description of that.
Yeah.
And you talked about kind of what you or your sleep hygiene, your sleep routine. I think as athletes, we're often very quick to develop these pre-performance routines where it's like I do, steps 1 through 7 before a race or before practice. Um, and I always think it's really curious that we don't often apply that as much to our sleep routine. And we can totally use that time the same as we would like a pre-race time, right? It's like here's my 45-minute lead up to going to sleep. I need
Yeah.
to work through my steps and start at 1 and keep it going. It sounds like you do a really good job of that, or you've developed that over the
Yeah.
past year.
Yeah, I would say in general, like I'm not a very routine oriented person. Like even race day, I try to really not be super particular about things, especially as we travel internationally so much. Things are out of your control, and like you can't always have things go exactly what you want. And so I want to be able to be flexible and not be super particular, but I think sleep is one of those things where you can kind of control it. It's your own schedule, hopefully, usually. And so yeah, take that where you can.
And it's probably a big win when you're traveling a lot for competition, right? Kind of previous to the past year, and then hopefully in future years. I know sleep on the road can be a real challenge for a lot of athletes.
Yeah, definitely. It can be, and just hope that you have a comfy bed, and I don't know, take a few things that help me sleep better, earplugs or whatever, maybe if we have roommates. Yeah. So
Is there anyone you've been inspired by along the way, or anything in particular that you've learned from them?
yeah, I definitely have idols within my sport currently, and I am so fortunate to work with one of like the greatest American cyclists ever, women cyclist, Sarah Hammer. She's our national team coach, and I just feel like she has all this wisdom to share. Like anytime we're on the road together, I'm constantly asking her questions about her race experience, and she doesn't give these long speeches, but she'll just give little bits of information or like little bits of encouragement that like just sit with me. And I feel so lucky to just kind of have her as both an idol and as a coach. And then I also have like heroes outside of cycling. I was thinking, as I saw the questions, I'm like, okay, one of my current idols is Angel Collinson. Like she's one of the best skiers in the world. And I think um, what appeals to me is like she's a skier, but she also, has so much outside of skiing that she's interested in, and mindset, and just like healthy lifestyle and balance in life outside of just skiing. And I really that appeals to me. Like that's been one of um, the coolest things about my training this past year is being able to be very committed to cycling, but also like have time and making time to do other things that I love, like skiing and hiking. And I think when you're just like stuck in tunnel vision with one thing, you can't necessarily um, be stimulated all the time by it. Like you just need other passions and other hobbies. And yeah, that's what I really love about her. Is like she's an amazing athlete and also has other passions.
It sounds like that variety gives you like a good psychological reset as well, or a chance for you to kind of add some perspective to a lot of the training that you're doing.
Oh, for sure. And like obviously different community too. I mean, there's a lot of overlap, but I really appreciate like just being able to go ski with friends and like not talk about bikes and like not talk about high performance training all the time and just like have a different outlet. And that's been really, really helpful for me mentally and just, to escape from the pressures of high performance sport. So,
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that with us.
yeah, of course.
Are there any great bits of advice you've received along the way?
Yeah, back to my gymnastics days, I think um, one of the it was a hard lesson to learn at the time, but I had a skill I was trying to learn on the bars. I mean, I was 11. I remember this day so well. And I just threw like a fit over like my coach was asking me to just do it. He was like, there's no like training wheels. Like you can't just there's no other way to do it other than to just do it. And I was like, no, I like can't believe you're asking me to do this. It's way out of my element. I can't do it. I can't do it. And he just finally looks at me. He's like, okay, well, go sit over in the corner there, like grab a piece of paper and a pen, and you're gonna write this statement until the end of practice. And it was whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And I was miserable. I'm like crying. I'm like just like broken down 11-year-old girl. But that has stuck with me forever. It's like this mentality of like you convince yourself you can't do something, well, you're not gonna be able to do it. But if you take the inverse of that, if you convince yourself you can, like within reason, you can and you can make it happen. And so that advice has stuck with me ever since. I mean, 14 years later, here I am, like recalling that moment so vividly. And I've definitely taken that to any sort of athletic endeavor I've had since, just like believing in yourself and believing in the training that you've put in or whatever it may be leading up to what you're trying to attempt and trusting that it will happen for you. So, yeah.
That's such a valuable learning experience hidden in such an old school coaching method.
I know. I mean, it's probably like not well aged, but I kind of like that. I like the tough love coach aspect of things, and like I definitely feel like I perform better when people push me. I push myself quite a bit, but I like like having someone light a fire under me and just challenge me to do better because I know that I can.
And it seems like that theme of self belief has kind of ran kind of as an undercurrent in this conversation. It
Yeah.
really stands out.
I mean, yeah, you have to. I mean, I think surrounding yourself with people who support you and believe in you is huge, but also, they can only get you so far. Like you have to believe in yourself at the end of the day. And I'm so fortunate to have this amazing network of people who've supported me all along the way ever since I was a little kid. But yeah, being able to like take control of your dreams and what you want to accomplish is huge. Like you have to kind of want to be there yourself.
Well, I think we're linking one question into another here, but is there any advice that you give your younger self when you reflect back upon either your time in gymnastics or even as a younger cyclist?
Um, I would say, oh, excuse me, I need a drink of water. Let me think. I'm outside. There's a lot of pollen. Like, um, yeah. Okay. So, advice for my younger self, I would say just keep trusting in your mindset. I don't know. Like, it's hard. I feel like uh, it's. I I don't know. I think that's a really hard question because I think I trust that all the decisions I made leading up to this point were, the best I could have made at the time. And, you only take your experience and apply it to the next. But just stay positive and and ask for help when you need it and stay motivated. But
Yeah, I think a good way to think about a question sometimes can be if you were taking on like a younger athlete, if you're tasked with mentoring or coaching, kind of a Clara from a couple of years ago.
yeah, okay. I would say set small goals and like have large overarching goals like where you'd ultimately like to be, but have small goals that keep you accountable and keep you motivated. I would say that is the one piece of advice I would try to instill.
I think that just links so neatly into your kind of attitude of self belief, and again the themes that have ran throughout the conversation.
Yeah, I just think if you're like giving yourself benchmarks and progress points, it only like fuels your fire to keep getting better because you're like making progress and you're able to acknowledge, how far you've come. And yeah, just trusting that you'll get to where you want to be if you just keep putting in the work.
It's that whole each step is achievable from the step before kind of mantra.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there are going to be setbacks. Like it's not all going to be, the perfect day of training that you'd hope for, or perfect competition that you've, trained your whole career for. But I think if you can take even just the challenges as learning experiences or opportunities, and they're, hidden opportunities if they come as a big challenge at the time, and hopefully move forward from there.
So, what does the future look like for you? Have you got any projects you're working on? Obviously, you've got the Tokyo Games coming up in a little under 100 days now,
Yeah.
around 100
Um,
days.
Yeah, we're just after the able-bodied Olympics, so I think we're somewhere right around 100. Yeah, because I think the Olympics just celebrated their 100 days out last week or so. Um, yeah, like I said, I have this World Cup in Belgium. That'll be a great benchmark. I mean, unfortunately, with COVID, we won't have our entire field there. Like, there are some countries who won't be able to travel. And so that will be the one downside is just it is a benchmark, but then you just don't know what the other people who aren't there are doing. And then we have our team trials, our Paralympic trials in Minneapolis, which will be mid-June, and I'm really lucky to have already qualified for the games, but it'll be kind of a monumental moment of with the naming ceremony and just the official being named to the team, which will be kind of a cool point. I can see it being pretty ceremonious. I don't quite know what to expect other than there are three sports: cycling, swimming, and track and field that all have our trials together. And then at the end, there's a naming ceremony. So I'm assuming it'll be something like a graduation. Um, but I'm really looking forward to that. My family is going to Minneapolis, and luckily just don't have the pressure of trying to make the team, just knowing that it'll be kind of a celebratory weekend rather than a pressure filled need to perform to make the team. And then post Tokyo, my thought is keep racing my bike and doing more able bodied racing. I'd eventually like to make a professional team able bodied. And I would like to keep doing para, and I'm really grateful to have it as an outlet, but would like to demonstrate that we're also like high performance athletes that can hold our own in an able bodied field as well. And yeah, I feel like I'm super strong and hopefully able to make that happen. So that's kind of my next big goal, like it's not quite like pie in the sky, but it's a lofty goal for sure. But my hope is to do that before Paris 2024.
Well, I'm sure from the previous conversation, you've taken the time to break down the steps leading up to that, and
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I've only been racing for a few years, so I like need to work my way up in the able-bodied categories. The way USA Cycling has it all structured, there are very clear like benchmarks for points wise, and so at least that's helpful to just know like exactly what it takes to get to the end goal. So
And the naming ceremony just sounds like such a great celebration, especially going in knowing that you're kind of on the team, but also to celebrate your teammates who may be qualified at the event.
yeah, of course. That has been huge too. Is like I've only been on the team for a little bit, but it does feel like I have such strong connections with these people and want to see them succeed as well. And of course, it'll be heartbreaking, and it's just going to be a small team, and so like rooting for all of these people and knowing that some just might not make it, and so yeah, hoping to be there to support that end as well. Just it's been a long road for all of us, and with the extra year with the postponement, especially just a lot of waiting and anxiety and pressure for them. So really want to support them.
And when's that event? Is that after your Bruges trip?
Yep, that'll be mid June. Yep, and I'll actually have world championships right before that. So, sorry, I'll go Belgium, Portugal, and then the team trials in Minneapolis. So that's mid June.
It's an
So yeah,
action-packed next few months.
yeah, it's gonna be kind of crazy. It feels like the calm before the storm, and it's also weird because we've had the schedule out for a year, and I'm like, man, April, May, June, it's gonna be so hectic, and then it's finally here, and I'm like, oh no. I had a year to prepare and it still feels like it's gonna be a lot.
Yeah, such a change of pace from the previous 12 months, I imagine.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, very lucky to be healthy and be able to travel again. So
Yeah, I'm really excited to see you back on the road again. That's gonna be a blast, I'm sure.
yeah, it will be. And nice to see teammates again and yeah.
And then we chatted about it a bit as we went, but what does your support system look like? Kind of on a, I guess, like on a personal, kind of local level, or even on like sponsorship level, who helps you out along the way?
Yeah. I would say, like primarily my family has been a huge support ever since, I was a kid and getting hurt. My parents pretty much dropped everything to move south and help me get the best care possible at one of the best rehab centers for spinal cord injuries, and have since been so on board with this cycling pursuit. Like they are traveling to most races I have internationally and just kind of following me around as like my personal cheering squad. And it is so heartwarming to just have them like be stoked and like, obviously they saw the progression, me starting out not necessarily super successful and then have since, had the success and they're just so thrilled. Um Excuse me, more pollen. Yeah, and then my boyfriend who I keep mentioning, his name is Noah. He's also on the team with me and he's my coach, my training partner, and mechanic, and like everything, check all of the boxes, he's that. And so he's been just a huge help and support, and I hope I'm the same to him in return. Just we keep each other kind of level and cheering for each other, every day as well as at the competition. And then I have just this huge network in Maine who cheered me on ever since I was a kid and got hurt. Like I got hurt in a pretty small town, and so felt like I've always had this community, cheering for me and supporting me. And then sponsor wise, have been very fortunate as well this year to line up some, especially, in the midst of COVID. Head Wheels, which are some of the fastest wheels in the world. Very lucky to be riding them. Bolocho Apparel, they are my apparel sponsor on the bike and make some amazing, comfy, sharp looking, high quality, best cycling apparel. And then just recently started working with Laser as a helmet sponsor. And so that's also super important. Keep the noggin safe and fast. So yeah, and I'm working with Outride as well. They are a nonprofit advocating for more kids on bikes and just people on bikes in general, and a really nice organization to be partnered with. So it's been a kind of a cool year to be involved with all of these different partners and hoping to spread the word about bikes and everything that goes with that.
It's amazing. What a great team to surround yourself with.
Yeah, I'm really lucky to have everybody on my side. So
Right, we're kind of rounding off for time here, but have you got a number one takeaway for our audience, or a kind of final words of wisdom?
I mean, without sounding too cliche, like, I mean, how many times have I said this? Like, believe in yourself. Maybe more, or less cliche. It's just, you know, pick pick your passion, pick whatever you're doing, and just as long as you, how do I want to say it? Like, you can make it happen to the extent you want to. Like, you don't need to be an elite athlete if you don't, like, if you don't want to be competing at the highest level, don't. Like, just do things to the extent you want to, and um yeah, commit yourself to the extent you want to, and hopefully you can reach the point in your sport or your whatever activity it may be, with the commitment level you're willing to put in, and just set goals, and take the setbacks as opportunities, and hopefully you can learn from the mistakes, and keep being excited about what you're doing. That's what I would say. And sleep is very important. Don't downplay the role of sleep. Recovery is an amazing thing.
Amazing, Clara. Thank you again so much for your time. Where can people connect with you? Where can they support you? Where can they follow along your journey, Tokyo and beyond?
Yeah. So on the Team USA website, Team USA Paracycling, that has kind of all of our team updates and some pretty incredible athletes. So be sure to follow along with them. They also have an Instagram, US Paracycling. And then my personal Instagram is clara.brownie. So try to post some race updates and just life updates. Keep it fun, keep it light. Some good photos, some funny ones.
It's all about balance.
Hair,
I'll be sure to link everything in the show notes and stuff so people can click through and find you.
That'd be awesome. And Noah, my boyfriend, I'd have to give him a shout out too. His handle is @GimpCyclist, so he keeps it pretty high strung as well, as you can tell.
I'll be sure to add that and people can follow along.
Yeah.
Well, again, thank you for your time. Yeah, it was a blast having you on to chat about this stuff.
Yeah, I really appreciate your time, and it's been fun hanging out.
Thank you so much for joining me in that conversation with Clara Brown. I loved hearing the diligence that Clara brings in pursuing marginal gains, consistently making 1% improvements across many areas of her athletic life. If you enjoyed this interview and want to see more like it, then please take the time to subscribe to the channel and share it with anyone else who might find it interesting. I've been Andrei Mandzuk, and this has been Mountain Mindset. Until next time.